If you love movies and movie discussions, you've come to the right place. Who am I, you ask? I am the Wiz, and I'm here today with...
Kim Shactman.
Kim! What happened?
I fell off the face of the planet.
Look. I don't understand what could be more important than this podcast. I mean, what is family really? Like, really? Like,
oh my God!
I want to see my dad for his birthday. Yeah. Fuck that shit.
Yeah.
No kidding.
You have to record this with me right now. Yes, I was with my father last weekend for his birthday. I was spending the night at their house.
That's sweet. That was sweet. Yeah. So, happy birthday to your dad a week late. When you texted me that, I was like, oh, what are you doing? Go see your dad. Like,
my dad turned 67, and the next day I was going to record my podcast with Wiz, and I was like, wow, I'm really tired.
Yeah.
Like, my dad is like kicking my ass at 67. Like, what is wrong with me?
No.
Oh, so,
it'll be 2 more years, and then it'll be a nice birthday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll be like a, not so active one. They took me to Maine, and a lot of flooding up in Maine. For anyone that has visited there recently, you got to feel bad for those people. We saw a lot of damage and talked to the locals, and he's helping them out and stuff. So yeah, my heart goes out to those folks.
Oh, that's terrible. I really didn't know that. We just had a snowstorm yesterday here in New Jersey. It was like 3 or 4 inches, but it was enough to close schools down for some reason. But, All right, so we are here to review the 2014 biopic, The Theory of Everything, starring Eddie Redmayne, Felicity Jones, and Charlie Cox, directed by James Marsh. I think we discussed this before we recorded. Mm-hmm. We know who Stephen Hawking is, but we don't really know much about his story, correct?
I knew nothing. I'm so bad. I feel like I was the only person in the world that knew who he was, but didn't know his story. My husband was like, how do you not know about Stephen Hawking? I'm like, I don't know. I'm just in my own little bubble doing my own thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. He's like, there was a lot going on with him, and the world was amazed by his perseverance and all this stuff. And I'm just like, I have no idea. I'm like, I just know he was sick and he was in a wheelchair, and I felt bad for him, but I didn't know his whole story.
Yeah. No, seriously, I felt the same way about you. I knew he was incredibly smart. He was sick. He had a disease, and that he had one of his books made into a documentary by Errol Morris. That was the only things I knew about him.
But you knew more than I did.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that. Yeah.
And I watched A Brief History of Time, and I got... It's been a while since I've seen it, and I remember just being like, this is all very interesting, but I don't understand
I have no what
of
the hell I'm watching. You're like, what?
It's like Homer Simpson watching Twin Peaks. Yeah. Brilliant! I have no idea what's going on.
Right over your head.
Yeah.
Now I want to watch it just to see how in-depth it is.
I didn't know about the relationship he had with his wife, specifically too, so... This was definitely something that, I saw this about 10 years ago and reviewed it. So this was a very interesting experience watching this again.
It was my first time, so yeah.
Yeah. So you want to get into the review?
Let's do it.
Let's get into the review of The Theory of Everything, directed by James Marsh. But before we do, let's get into the plot. I think we pretty much went over it. In the 60s... Stephen Hawking is a Cambridge University student and future physicist, and falls in love with a student named Jane Wilde, played by Felicity Jones. Eddie Redmayne plays Stephen Hawking. At age 21, he learns he has a motor neuron disease, which I think is called ALS now, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Despite this, and with Jane at his side, he begins an ambitious study of time while dealing with his disease and deterioration of his body, the things that happen with him and with his wife. I think the first thing to point out is this is more of a romance film than it really is a biopic on Stephen Hawking.
Yes, and did you also want to point out where this film came from?
Yes.
Or do you want to get into that later?
Okay, I will definitely get into it in one of my points, but this actually is not a biopic of Stephen Hawking. This is based off of the book by Jane Hawking about the relationship between Stephen and her.
Which I did not even know until right before we started recording this episode.
Yeah, I didn't know that when I first watched the film back in 2015. It wasn't until after I started doing my review, I was like, oh, no wonder it's more about Jane. It's based off of Jane's book. So,
I was like, okay, this is all coming together now. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going crazy.
Yeah. Okay, so we've gotten to the plot. Let's get into our 3 points. Kim, why don't you go first with your first point, which is similar to mine.
Yes, it is very similar. I kind of piggybacked off of Wiz's point. As Wiz kind of mentioned to me before, it is a performance piece film. You know, it's very honed in on the performances of Redmayne as well as Jones, because they're the main characters and they are just very forward in their performances. I loved them both. I thought they were both really, really good. Jones was excellent. And I obviously give props to Redmayne because he had to play someone with ALS. Like, that is hardcore acting. How he had to move his body and change his body language and his image and, like, use props around him to see his body deteriorating. I mean, I don't think I could ever do something like that, or, you know, any actor that has been in the scene. Like, I just feel like that is a very hard thing to do. So I gave him a lot of props for that.
Yeah, so the way I put it is Redmayne is the showiest of the performances of the film. Which
he should be. You know what I mean?
Yes. The physical transformation that he went through is to be commended. It is actually very convincing. Like, with that, I would agree with that. I ended up liking Jones' performance a little bit better. It's not as physically demanding, but she carries the film. And I think this ties into how I felt about the film the first time, where I was expecting it to be a Stephen Hawking film when it really is a Jane Hawking film. I wasn't bothered by it because Felicity Jones is so good in the role. I mean, the film relies on her essentially to carry the film because, let's face it, the nature of the disease that Stephen Hawking had, unless you're going to have him do inner monologues in his head and it's going to be blasted to the audience, he's not going to provide much.
Right.
So, or if you're going to have subtitles where you can understand what he's saying, which they don't do that, which I think is an actually good move in this movie. Because
I'm glad they didn't. Yeah, I feel like it would have ruined it.
Well, it actually shows the closeness between Jane and Stephen, where even though Stephen is very hard to understand, Jane understands because she knows exactly how Stephen thinks and is going for that end. So it was important for Jones to really carry the movie, and she did a very good job of that. I'm not knocking Redmayne's performance. I think it's a very good performance. It's very showy, and the physical nature of it is actually impressive. But I ended up liking Felicity Jones a little bit more. I want to say also, at watching this a second time, I really was surprised by Charlie Cox in this movie, who played... all right, let's just get into it. Charlie...
Good. Refresh my memory, since it's been 2 weeks since I've watched
Sure.
it.
Charlie Cox plays a man who was a widower. I believe he was a widower. I think his wife died. Is the leader of the church choir.
Oh, yes. Now I remember.
Yeah,
okay.
And he ends up having a non-traditional relationship with Jane and Stephen, whereas he takes care of the kids and helps Jane, but is also romantically involved with Jane.
Over time, yeah.
Over time, which Stephen offers up to Jane at the time, which he says, you know, if you... I forget the exact line, but basically is, if you need that affection, go ahead. Essentially is what happens with Stephen and Jane in that one. I'm surprised by Charlie Cox's performance, mainly because I know him in Boardwalk Empire and in Daredevil. Boardwalk Empire, he plays a thug, and in Daredevil, he's Matt Murdock, which is Daredevil, who is a blonde superhero who's a very intimidating guy. He plays both characters really well, but I don't remember seeing him again in such a sensitive, but in a soft demeanor. But he pulls it off very well in this movie. I was actually pretty surprised.
I liked him too. I thought he was pretty good. I saw Boardwalk Empire like a long time ago, so I probably just forget him in that, but I haven't seen him in anything else. But yeah, like if those are the roles he's used to playing and now seeing him in that light, I can see how you would enjoy his performance in this film.
No, yeah, he's very good in this movie, I think.
I think so too, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so Kim, what's your second point?
I really feel like the film was about perseverance with obviously Hawking and his disease, but as well as like his wife really trying to keep the marriage intact over time. And then it's almost like it morphed into, as you mentioned, her having feelings for the priest or whatever he was. and then, Hawking going a different route with his feelings for somebody else. But I feel like for a really long time, like, she was trying hard, to fight those feelings, and she was trying to persevere through his disease to stay his wife and stay in love with him. But that's gonna be some hard shit right there. Like, I was like, this lady is like doing the best she can with what she is given.
It really makes you like Jane a great deal, even when she is getting frustrated with things. And the film does a really good job of making Jane a likable character while sympathizing when she has her moments. Right. It makes it very understandable as to why she is acting the way she is. And to me, you would have to be pretty insensitive to think of her as like, oh, what a bitch. How can she be like this?
Yeah, and they showed it gracefully of how hard she tried to, keep the family together and keep just their daily lives intact while caring for Stephen. But they showed gracefully how hard that was for her and everything she tried to do, and how she just kind of floated into this romance, with the other gentleman.
And this is going to probably dovetail into my second point, which is this is heartfelt and powerful in spots. I think the one scene in the film that really grabbed my attention, that was done pretty well, is when the father is talking to Jane in the beginning, talking about his autoimmune disease, and saying, you need to stop. You don't understand. This is going to get worse before it gets any better. So why don't you go live your life? Go live your life well. And it's like, no, I love Stephen. I want to be with Stephen. And we'll do this. Those types of scenes can tend to be over-dramatized and to a point where they're kind of corny. It's like, no, I love him, and I would sacrifice anything I want to be with him.
I'm going to be with him till the day he dies.
Yes. And in this, it's very grounded. She's very sober thought, and she's like, no, I understand what's going to happen. Love your son. I want to be with him. And another thing that the film does very well is show that Jane didn't portray herself necessarily as somebody who was like, oh, poor baby. She's like, no, Stephen, you need to get up. You need to... she was a positive force all around in this. Now, Jane is the person who wrote this book. And in the...
Right. Well, speaking of that, I'm like, well, how much of this was a little bit exaggerated from her point of view? But but if it was, I think it was still done well for the film, because it wasn't over exaggerated in the film.
Absolutely.
It is her point of view.
Yeah, and I've never heard anything from Stephen Hawking saying, actually, that woman was a bitch. It's like,
the movie was terrible, or what, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm gonna assume that's how it went. And the way they portrayed Jane in this movie, I thought, was very well done, because it showed her as strong on multiple fronts. But when she starts to break down, it's not like it's a character flaw from the movie, or it's not like... It made sense, and it made it more emotionally impactful because of that.
Well, also, too, the fact that, not just from a romantic angle, but also from, a friendship angle, right? On how much they cared for each other, regardless of the romantic feelings.
Yes, absolutely. Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Okay, so...
Oh, wow, we're getting really serious right now.
Yes, we are. Okay.
Okay.
Give me that, okay. Were you saddened that there wasn't, a cuckold kink scene with Stephen asking Jane about how it was to sleep with Jonathan?
What?
No, really think about this. He loves his wife, right? It's like...
Right.
So he'd be on the keyboard going, tell me how he feels.
Oh my God. Well, I mean... when you put it that way, Jesus Christ, that is just so weird and creepy. I mean, if he was I wish
time is a construct, so is your feelings for him. Tell me how he tastes now.
It's awful. No, I mean, I'm sure he had desires to know just from not being able to feel.
Oh, I would not want to know that. Oh, God.
I mean, I wouldn't either, but not from my husband, or if it was if I was a man and it was my wife, but if I was talking to maybe someone outside of my relationship, I'd be describe the feeling, right? Because when was the last time he had that? years, right? But like when it's your own wife, that's kind of fucking creepy.
So let me be honest about my thoughts on that type of thing. I understand people can do open relationships, and I'm totally fine with that. I have no problem with people who are okay with that kind of lifestyle. I know for a fact I can't do that. Like,
I can't either.
No.
That will never be me, ever.
But I would like to think that if I got that sick, and my wife is taking care of me, and she's doing her best, I would like to think that I would be man enough to say, honey, if you need affection, I understand. If I can't provide that, I understand.
Yeah. I mean,
would I though? Would I?
Like, I'd hope I would, but I don't know if I would.
Yeah, like, let me tell you one. Let me tell you one. Like,
with the technology nowadays, you'd be like, I just ordered you a big dildo. Go for it.
It has 10 speeds.
yeah. Seriously, you'd be like, you don't need another man.
Yeah. But like, oh god. But like, just with me, like, I would think that if I'm sick and I love my wife that much, that I would be man enough to say, yes, honey, go right ahead.
I want you to have all that pleasure and affection that I just clearly cannot physically give you. Yeah.
I would like to think that I am capable of doing that. Do I know that?
Like, I don't know if I would either.
I just don't know.
Go do it, but don't or I'd be like in my head, like, I hope she does it, but I'm not going to say anything. You know what I mean? Like, I hope that they just move forward with it, but don't tell me about it. You know what I mean?
Or if I'm like bitter, I'll be like, I hope she does it and it sucks.
Yeah. Like, I was the best fucking lover before I got sick, so doesn't really matter now. Go for it.
Yeah. Oh god, that's egotistical.
Hey, whatever gets you through.
Oh god. Oh man. Okay, so now that we got to that point.
Question. That was a good discussion topic.
God. That's what the thing I kept thinking about throughout the entire film. It's like, why isn't there a scene where he's like, tell me how it feels?
Oh my god. Because it would sound really creepy in that weird fucking computer voice.
That is true.
That's why.
No, that is true. You would have to think that maybe he asked, right? Maybe?
Maybe.
Or was he just too...
not in the film, maybe.
Or, maybe with how busy he was, he just didn't think about it.
He probably threw all his mind and brain into work just so he wouldn't have to fucking deal with thinking about those types of things.
True. That's a possibility.
Because he was very obsessed with his work, obviously.
Yes, absolutely. So if we have any information about how Stephen Hawking felt about being a cuck, let us know. No kidding. Please don't let us know.
In the comments below. No.
Please don't let us know. Please don't let us know. No.
Yeah.
All right, Kim, let's get off of this. Get off this. Oh my god.
Okay, on to the next
third point.
Topic or subject. My third point is kind of similar to what we discussed in my first point about kind of the performances.
Okay.
Where everything was very emotional. It was a very, there was one point, I forget which scene it was, because again, we watched this 2 weeks ago, but there was one scene where I was almost in tears. I wish I could remember which one it was. Obviously, it was when, he was very ill, and they were, I want to say it was when, he left her. I think when he went to the US or something, and she was just like, oh wow, okay, bye. I think I was almost in tears at that point. So for me, it was really emotional. I feel for both characters.
Sure.
It's
absolutely.
If I were Steven and I felt comfortable enough to go, and I threw that was my life's work, and I could do a book tour and do all this shit, and I was as sick as he was, but I could still do it. Fuck yeah, I would go. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But then leaving your wife behind that has cared for you all those years and not taking her with you, it's kind of that's so sad.
Yes, but this is one of the things I think the film could have done a better job with. But again, how are you going to do this with Stephen Hawking the way he is I would like to think Stephen saw how much she was doing. At that point, they showed that she wasn't as happy as she was without Jonathan.
Right.
And basically it was go be with Jonathan. Go right ahead.
I wish he was kind of, I wish in the film they kind of showed more of, I'm going to go, but you should stay with him. not just stay. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think that would have worked entirely. I'm talking more along the lines of, I guess, show ways where Steven's noticing that she's not doing well, and it's mainly because she misses Jonathan, but not be so direct about it. Again, I don't know how to do that because at that point, Steven can't talk. And the only way to do that is through that computer, and I don't think it would...
And it just sounds awful.
Yeah, that was kind of the weird quirk. With him. Yeah, that's the weird quirk when it comes to Stephen Hawking at that time. And I remember watching A Brief History of Time, and I was like, can they get a better voice?
Well, like, then, you know what I was thinking about throughout most of the film, too? I was like, imagine if, like, they created that chair today.
Yes.
Like, it would probably be, like, sick. Like, it would probably be, like, so cool. Like any voice you want, like a Peloton screen. You know what I mean?
Oh.
Like, it would probably be so cool, like, and better.
When Roger Ebert lost his voice, there's already technology available to him for multiple voices. And what they tried to do, because Roger Ebert did a lot of radio, TV, and stuff for his reviews, they tried to make an algorithm to where it would be his voice, because there was so much audio, they would be able to use that voice and talk. But it would turn out that when they did that, it didn't sound right, because there's different cadences, there's different ways of talking and different dialects.
Like trying to blend it, and it didn't do what
it really did not. It did not work. I think with AI now, it's certainly possible, but
yeah, I just always think that, I'm like, imagine if he had that, like, if that happened to him and he was around today, like, he'd probably be like, this is way better.
yeah.
But yeah,
I do find it funny when Jane was like, an American voice. I'm like, yeah, that's the only one they have.
yeah.
Yeah, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
My third point will likely divide some. This isn't a Stephen Hawking biopic as much as a Jane biopic. I think we need to state this directly. If you are looking to watch a movie about Stephen Hawking, you're really not getting it.
Not fully. You're not fully getting it. Yeah.
I mean, you are to a point, but you're getting it in the eyes of Jane in this one. Yeah. And the movie is more interested about the relationship between Jane and Stephen than I think Stephen's work. But I think, like you said, like, I kind of like that, because it's easy. I think it's probably easier to follow than the documentary that you watched. But it was a good idea in this movie, because unless you sit down with Stephen Hawking and go over his entire life, you're not going to get a standard biopic, is what I would think. And either you'd have to start at a very young age and then end it where he gets sick, which at that point is like, well, that has nothing to do with his great work later on. Or you'd have to really do something creative around the time he gets sick. Because what else is he doing? He's living at home and he's working on his dissertations. That's it. What else?
Like, if you were not sick, like, you wouldn't have, like, I mean, you could have a biopic done on you, but, like, would it be as popular? Probably not.
Well, I don't really care about popular. I just don't think it would work. It would just be like, what would you do?
That's what I mean. Like, people wouldn't really, like, they'd be like, what is this? Like, I don't care.
Oh, this is the time where Stephen did research. Right. And this is the time when Stephen did research.
Like, it'd be super boring.
It really wouldn't work the way I think a lot of people would. There are interesting things about Stephen Hawking, of course, but I think this was the best story you're going to get out of it. If you're fascinated by Stephen Hawking and you're thinking about this is going to be the biopic of Stephen Hawking,
all about him.
Yeah, just curb your expectations, because it's more about Jane than I think anything else. So
yes.
All right, Kim, so who do you recommend this for?
You and I our first recommendations are similar. So, romance lovers.
Yes.
It was very romantic, especially in the beginning of their relationship. I was like,
yeah, we didn't really go over that too much. The romance portion is very sweet in this movie.
It is.
Yeah, absolutely.
They were just, like, so in love at the beginning.
Why? God, I was a nerd back then. Why couldn't I get a beautiful woman like that? Come on.
Oh my God. You know what my husband always says to me? Like, he'll see, like, a scene in the film, like any film, and it'll be a little romantic scene. And let's say they're kissing by, like, a fountain or something. He'll be like, where's my kiss by the fountain in the garden? Like, every time, like, any movie we're watching, I'm like,
just be like, Go build one and find out, okay?
That's what I said. I was like, why don't you take me to a goddamn fountain? Give me a kiss.
After all the work I do, I deserve to be kissed under a fountain.
No, like, seriously, he's like just making fun of it all the time.
Oh, okay.
Where's my kiss under the starlight? I'm like, oh, shut up.
Why weren't we going round and round near an ocean?
Yeah. Or like, where's my time with you on the Ferris wheel? Like,
yeah.
oh, God.
No, I would be the type of guy who'd be like, honey, would you have sex with me even though I can't move?
Yeah.
Like, that would be me. That would be me. Like, I wouldn't be like,
well, he did mention when we were because he watched it with me, and he said to me, he's like, yeah, I'd let you bang that guy if I couldn't move. I was like, oh, okay, thanks.
Oh, that's sweet of him. That's sweet of him. Good for him.
He's like, I'd let you go do it with the priest. I'm like, okay.
Good for Kim's husband. Look at you. So progressive.
What a great guy.
Yeah, there you go. Go bang that guy if you can. I can't do it,
Well, he was like, I hope you'd do the same for me if it was vice versa. Okay. I
so
guess.
the motivations come out, huh?
So for romance lovers, that's who I recommend it for.
Okay.
I also recommend for those that want to learn more about Stephen Hawking and Jane Hawking's life together, as you kind of pointed out in your last point. Because like I said, I knew like next to nothing about Stephen Hawking. I'm just one of those people that were just like unaware. So I learned a lot about his disease, what he went through, but then again, also Jane Hawking's life with him, the romance. And I found it very heartfelt, touching, and emotional. So if you want to learn more about Stephen Hawking, but as Wiz said, like not so much his work, but just about his home life and how they, worked together to get him through as much of the disease as possible, then I highly recommend it.
Okay. And who do you not recommend this for?
Similar to what you are probably going to say if you're expecting a Stephen Hawking biopic.
Okay.
Because again, it's not all about him, right? It's about her too, her point of view, especially now knowing it was from her novel. And then I also really don't recommend those that have a loved one that are sick or may have gotten sick recently to watch this from an emotional standpoint, right? Like, you may be able to relate to what Stephen Hawking is going through, and it may be really tough for you to watch from like a trigger perspective.
I'm going to push back a little on this because I guess if you don't really want to see those aspects again, I get that. But I could see this being for someone who is really struggling with it and finding more strength from it and going, well, this person was able to do it and is strong enough to do it. Maybe I am too. Well,
I think more of like, I don't know, if like,
you don't want to see someone else get sick.
Or if you were caring for somebody that was sick and they passed away, and then you're watching this and you're like, well, he got through it, but my person didn't.
Yeah,
right?
Okay,
like,
that's true.
Kind of deal. True. Like, that might be tough. And I'm not saying, that's for anyone, but for those that are really emotional, especially if like, maybe if you're a wife or a sensitive male and, you just went through it and they have passed, that could be really tough.
No, I see what you're saying. So who do I recommend this for? I recommend this for people that love romantic dramas, as you have just mentioned. I think that the best parts of the film are the romantic drama aspects. So if you like romantic dramas, go for it. I would also recommend this if you like watching showy and impressive performances. I like Felicity Jones better in this movie, but I have to admit that Eddie Redmayne did a great job physically transforming into Stephen Hawking. So
I also feel like they worked well together.
Yes, absolutely. Definitely. Yeah. So if you like movies that have those types of performances, go for it. Who do I not recommend this for? I do not recommend this if you are expecting a Stephen Hawking biopic. We already went over it. It's really not. It's more about Jane. Stephen's story is in there in bits and pieces, but it's really more about Jane in this movie. And I also don't recommend this if you do not want to see a quote-unquote alternative lifestyle picture, which I'm getting a little weirded by lately. I'm surprised by a lot of people, them being, not even just being straight, but well, it's mainly people who are straight, who refuse to watch movies based on gay relations, based on relationships that don't mirror their own. Because to me, a lot of why I watch movies is to get windows into those types of lives.
Right. I agree.
And I guess the alternative lifestyle, I guess, is basically an open relationship. So if you are bothered by that, then don't watch this movie, but I really have to wonder why. I'm about to, like, burst my own bubble here. A lot of people are comfortable watching the way with representation is nowadays. Like, people want to see themselves on screen. If they don't see themselves on screen, they're a lot less interested in the story, essentially. Correct. So that's probably the reason why. But
a lot of people are not really open-minded, right? Like, people aren't open-minded, or they're not willing to learn more about others. We are a very, like, selfish society, you know, like,
sure.
It's always about you, but I don't know. Like, I have to agree with you there.
If that bothers you, if you don't want to see an alternative lifestyle on screen, I would say, I guess, avoid this movie. Sad as that may be.
But I'm like you. You've especially opened my eyes to different films with, you know, different types of lifestyles in them that I would have never known, and, you know, kind of seen how different it is from my own. And I think it's important because it gives you a perspective on other, like, society in general and what others are going through. And it really makes you appreciate sometimes too what you have.
That's what art is supposed to do. It's supposed to challenge you. It's supposed to make you look at things in a different perspective. And the fact that we live in a society now that just wants everyone's perspective confirmed and just validated is just like, okay, that's not what art is supposed to be. That
and
really
also too, like, people in general just hate going out of their comfort zone. Like, it's just easier to stay in your comfort zone. Like you said, like, they're not challenging themselves.
But, like, I find it weird that people judge others for trying to go out of their comfort zone. I mean,
it is weird.
We can go over onto a lot of aspects. I think it's most prevalent in politics. Not that I'm going to get into my political beliefs.
Right.
But I don't like watching, listening, and reading stuff that mirrors my perspective. I want my perspective challenged. I want to see the opposite perspective, to see if my belief structure and what I believe is right is correct in my eyes. I want it challenged. And I want myself challenged in a lot of aspects. And I just find it incredibly odd that a lot of people don't like to be challenged. They don't want to improve. So,
they just don't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
They don't want to keep their minds open and learn new things because it's just comfortable otherwise.
Yeah. No, definitely. Okay, Kim, so do you recommend The Theory of Everything?
I do. I liked it. I really liked this film a lot. I loved the romance in it. It was a good film, and I learned a lot about Mr. Hawking and his wife.
I also recommend it. I feel the same exact way I did 10 years ago when I watched this. The romance is a lot better than I remember from watching it the first time. But the same thing that I had watching this film the first time still stands, where I kind of wanted more about Stephen Hawking, but I also recognize how hard that could have been to do that.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, like, I like where the film ended and what it became. I really recommend this if you are into romances, but overall, if you're interested in it, I recommend it. It's a good movie. We both recommend The Theory of Everything. Check it out whenever you get a chance. Now, if you want my full review on this movie, you can go to my website at IamTheWiz.com. You'll have my full written review right on the site, along with a link to the video that has this review that you've just listened to. Thank you for listening to this review. If you want to know what we're reviewing in the next couple of days, you can look on the screen right now to see what's coming up next. If you liked what you heard, go ahead and leave a like on this video. If you want to discuss your opinion on the film or the review itself, please leave a comment. And if you want to hear more, subscribe to the channel. Thank you again for listening. I will talk to you next time.